Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Okay, so there's been a whole lot of speculation about what happened with Kamala Harris and the reports that she was to do the Joe Rogan podcast. People have been talking a lot about how this came about, whether it was going to happen or not, and then of course in the end why it didn't happen. And as I just stated, it's all been speculation. People have been speculating, thinking, well, this is probably what happened, this is probably why it didn't happen, and this is probably the reason why they decided to do it, but all of it's been theory, of course, until today. Joe Rogan finally goes public with exactly what happened. And yup, you guessed it, it's literally exactly what we speculated, from start to finish. You know, it's funny how the Democrat machine is so incredibly predictable. You can just tell exactly what they're doing. They've got an MO, so to speak, and here's Joe Rogan pretty much confirming it all. Let me show you guys exactly what happened. Let's take a look at what was said here, and then talk about it. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so just take a look at the clip, and then you'll see exactly what I was talking about in the intro.
She had an opportunity to come in. You could look at this and you could say, oh, you're being a diva. But she had an opportunity to come here when she was in Texas, and I literally gave them an open invitation. I said, anytime. I said, if she's done at 10 o'clock, we'll come back here at 10 o'clock. I go, I'll do it at 9 in the morning. I'll do it at 10 p.m. I'll do it at midnight. She's up. She wants to, drink a Red Bull and party on.
Yeah, but I think this idea that you're being a diva is silly because you're offering her the opportunity to do exactly what the other candidate did, right?
Well, she actually reached out when she found out that he was coming on. So their camp reached out to me. So I said, great, I would love to talk to her. But it was very difficult to tie it down, and they wanted to travel. And see, the thing is, like, you can't, if I go somewhere, then there's going to be other people in the room. And they want to control a lot of things, I'm sure, according to the Brett Breyer interview on Fox. Like, people were waving him off. That's a distraction. People in the room, like, my whole goal with her and with him is just talk. Just have a conversation like a human being. You find out things about people. You get a sense of them, at least, a real sense. That was it. I don't give a f*** what we talk about. I really don't. I just want to talk to you. Who the f*** are you?
Do you think they think that you're on his side and they're more wary of you?
I don't know. I mean, there's just because of my appearance, there's always been this assumption that I'm some right-wing MAGA guy, I was a Bernie supporter. I am not. I'm a politically homeless person for sure. I always considered myself a left-wing person. I never thought I would ever vote right-wing. But then the tides of culture shifted in a very bizarre way. And it just made me, over time, much more aware of what this stuff is really all about. Because what this stuff is really all about is just these natural human behavior patterns and these tribal instincts that we have. And it overpowers all discussions. It overpowers what's good for the collective group. It overpowers everything. It's just people pick a team, and then whatever that team says, they can do no harm. They will do their best to marginalize the horrible effects of the furthest extreme version of that, whether it's Antifa or the Proud Boys. They'll minimalize the... It's the same thing, man. It's the same thing. If you look at what's going on with the liberals right now, so progressives they want the war in Ukraine to be funded. They want to censor speech online. And they want to give the World Health Organization, which is deeply influenced by Big Pharma, including the FDA, deeply influenced. The revolving door between the FDA and pharmaceutical drug companies is legendary. And they want to give them control over what we take and what we don't take. And that's crazy. And that doesn't make sense because that's not what the liberals were when I was a kid. My parents were hippies. We lived in San Francisco during the Vietnam War. My parents were like straight up hippies. That's how I was raised. And so for me, it was always like the liberals were the ones who wanted education and open-mindedness. The liberals who were the ones with the ACLU let the Nazis talk and let them have a rally. They said you can't infringe on people's free speech because if you infringe on the speech of people that you disagree with, you're being a hypocrite. The only solution to bad speech is better speech. We've always known that. But when they had the power over social media and these collective groups of people that all had the same ideology, and then that tribal mentality kicks in and you lose the perspective that you should have as an educated person that recognizes that everyone has to be able to talk and we have to figure out who's right. And you might be wrong. You might be wrong, and you might be clinging to this idea that you're right, and you're going to do the whole thing a terrible disservice.
Yep, so pretty much everything happened exactly as expected. The initial speculation was that Kamala Harris never had any actual intention of doing Joe Rogan, but then the reports were released that Donald Trump was planning on doing Joe Rogan, and obviously Kamala Harris was tanking in the polls, and so her team decided to open a line of communication. Basically a continuation of what we've seen throughout this election cycle. Donald Trump does something, and then Kamala Harris desperately follows and attempts to copy. And actually, speaking of this trend that we've noticed, Kamala Harris opened her recent rally with a little bit of a familiar song. Seems like Donald Trump does something and Kamala Harris simply copies. She's running a little bit of a copycat campaign here, but outside of the blatant plagiarism, let's call it, it's obvious that the Kamala campaign has been flailing and failing. I think their preferred strategy would have been no interviews at all, just remain in the basement for this entire election cycle and hope that the Taylor Swift endorsement's enough. But obviously that was never going to work and she was forced to have to do interviews, and so she scheduled on Fox News and was contemplating doing Rogan, but then it seemed as though the fallout from her Fox News performance, let's call it, or lack thereof, created possibly a little bit of a second-guessing scenario. And so what did they attempt to do? Well, that's the next part. They tried to have, let's call it, editorial control over a possible interview with Joe Rogan. They listed a couple demands, one of which was, you are to come to us. In other words, doing the podcast in an unfamiliar environment for Joe Rogan, where her staff was likely in control of the production, and of course only doing an hour. And Joe Rogan's response? Absolutely freaking not. And I don't blame him. Why would he? Donald Trump seemed to have no issue showing up in Austin, Texas. Not to mention Kamala Harris was in Texas. She was in Houston just recently with Beyonce. She had an opportunity to stop by in Austin, Texas and sit down with Rogan, but she didn't. And now they're using it as an excuse. Well, he didn't want to come to us. He should have came to us. Who do these people think they are? I mean, actually, there's a tweet that I responded to the other day. This random leftoid responds to Joe Rogan, who wrote, also for the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast. They offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have had to travel to her and they only wanted to do an hour. I strongly feel the best way to do it is in the studio in Austin. My sincere wish is to have a nice conversation and get to know her as a human being. I really hope we can make it happen. And this person responded, white male privilege update. Podcaster thinks a vice president in the last weeks of her presidential campaign should come to his studio in Texas rather than come to her. What a ridiculous claim. As if Kamala Harris is a more important person than Joe Rogan or more influential person than Joe Rogan. Give me a break. She's the vice president. What's her job entail? Standing around and pretending as if she's doing something for the last 4 years? Give me a frickin' break. Joe Rogan doesn't need Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris needs Joe Rogan. That's why she and her team were desperately reaching out to his team to schedule an interview. Joe Rogan doesn't need to lift a finger for Kamala Harris. He's the one with the platform. He's the one with the audience base that she wants to connect with. She could have taken, let's call it a 8 to 12 hour block out of her schedule, her very grueling schedule. I mean, come on. She's done like 3 events in the last 3 weeks. She could have found the time and showed up just like Donald Trump did, but she didn't. And that pretty much tells you all that you need to know. She's running away. She's fearful. She knows that the Joe Rogan experience likely wouldn't have been a good fit. You know, all you need to do is read the last Joe Rogan tweet where he says he just wished to have a nice conversation and get to know her as a human being. Yeah, that's pretty much kryptonite to dishonest, shady politicians who are kind of lacking in the, normal, natural human department. Kamala Harris prefers to act like a bot and just regurgitate the same nonsense over and over again. And so clearly Rogan wasn't the right place, Just like her rallies aren't the right place for Christian and Catholic voters. Her words, not mine. But anyways, it's essentially confirmation that one side is fake and one side is not. This election is very much fake versus real. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance both showing up on the Joe Rogan podcast, both having no issue with sitting down for 3 hours. I mean, they've done multiple podcasts at this point. 3 hours of unedited content and conversation. They've got no no issue with it. They show up. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris refuses to do anything that isn't edited, controlled, and on her terms. In my view, that pretty much tells you all that you need to know. You got one ticket here that's just genuine human beings who want to make America great again, and you got another ticket where they're essentially just establishment props. And I think at this point, that is as clear as day. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.